Now it's time to check in on how Trump's America is faring in America's Renaissance. Well, over at the White House press room, it's out with the old.
I am a black, gay immigrant woman, the first of all three of those to hold this position.
And in with the new.
I commit to telling the truth from this podium every single day. I commit to speaking on behalf of the President of the United States. That is my job.
Yes, the White House has a fresh new face, Caroline Leavitt. She's only 27 years old and she's already shaking up the mainstream media with this declaration.
If you are producing legitimate news content, no matter the medium, you will be allowed to apply for press credentials to this White House.
And I am thrilled and delighted to say that only 5 days after she first appeared on this show, the War Room's Natalie Winters is one of the very first new media people to be honoured with an official White House pass, and she joins us now. Natalie, congratulations. So exciting. You're upsetting everybody. The Daily Mail's upset by what you wear. The lefties are all upset by the fact that you're even there. Tell us about being there in the White House and tell us why you've upset so many legacy media.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me back. It's, I guess, my third day on the job, and I've already made basically the entire mainstream media apparatus extremely triggered and upset by us being there. Just to give your viewers some context, my co-host, Stephen K. Bannon, was sent to prison for 4 months for defying a congressional subpoena, something that they never really enforced here in the States unless you dare to speak out and criticize Joe Biden. So it's not just a historic moment for our show, talk about we are so back, indeed we are, but they have tried to shut us out, censor us, deplatform us, debank us, similar to what you were talking about. And they are so upset that their best efforts to silence our show did not work and that we're only back and better than ever. And to that point, it is such a weird, curious vibe there in the press briefing room. I think it's kind of the ultimate gaslight mixed with just utter and extreme cognitive dissonance, because it's a bunch of self-important people who take themselves so seriously. But in reality, they're not actually there to report the truth or do anything remotely resembling reality. They're there to lie and deceive the American people, the Australian people, frankly, everyone. So it's just such a kind of weird, just psychological experiment that is that press briefing room full of people who think they're such intellectuals doing the Lord's work, when in reality they're cogs in these sort of narrative propaganda wheel, all just melting down every day over everything that President Trump is doing.
Natalie, you've literally jumped into the middle of the swamp. It's like you're in your bathing suit, your bikini, you've jumped into the middle of the swamp with all the alligators all around you. Let's not forget, these are the people who lied about Russian collusion. These are the people who lied and did the bidding of the entire apparatus during COVID. This is the people who lied, as you said, about your boss. And this is the elite. These are the people who've been running the world. And you've stepped into the midst of this. No wonder they're freaking out. How did it feel?
It was absolutely amazing. But look, I think it's a sort of continuation of the legacy of President Trump, of populism, of the idea that the media, country, government, whatever you want to make the variable, it exists to serve the people and not to advance regime talking points or regime policies that benefit, whether it's big pharma in the case of RFK, the military industrial complex in the case of Pete Hegseth. And I think that my presence being there, again, not as just myself, but representing War Room, representing independent, non-corporate subsidized media, I think it really sort of forces the issue in the conversation about where any of these legacy media outlets actually derive their importance or significance from. I think it sort of represents the old guard mentality of credentialism, where the idea that because these people wasted their life in journalism school and because they work for outlets whose, advertisements are sponsored by companies like Pfizer and Moderna, that they're more legitimate than shows like my own, shows like yours, where actual people watch them, right? And you see it reflected in the fact that viewership among the MSNBCs and CNNs of the world are absolutely cratering. But it's just for so long that people haven't really had a voice. There hasn't actually been free and fair competition in the media world because they've weaponized every facet, every aspect of society to censor us and to censor our shows. And now that President Trump has done a lot of executive orders to claw back some of those funds, but just generally the censorship culture, like you were talking about, Elon Musk, has changed. They now have to compete not with a partisan form of the truth, but with just actual truth. It's not Republican or Democrat. It's just the elites and the elites sort of protectorate ruling class that is the mainstream media, of which they represent the tip of the spear, versus questions that people actually want to hear the answers to, as opposed to, fake performative LARPing questions that function no different than the way that, Chinese Communist Party run press in China. It's state-run media, and it's such a blessing that President Trump and Caroline Leavitt and the comms team over at the White House prioritizes the voices that actual Americans listen to and not
Absolutely.
just case subway.
Now, Natalie, we've had this horrific, ghastly airplane crash, which very close to where you are. Awful story. Obviously, we don't have all the full details of the black boxes and so on, but already Donald Trump has made accusations, if you like, or certainly pointed to the diversity, inclusion, equity programs of places like the FAA. Here he is talking about it. Have a listen.
FAA's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, psychiatric disability, and dwarfism all qualify for the position of a controller of airplanes.
So there, Natalie, he's talking about under Joe Biden, the diversity inclusion hires for even air traffic controllers and others included the range of individuals he read out. How's this playing in America? And is there truth to what Donald Trump is saying, that basically the institutions have been infused with this diversity mentality?
Of course they have, and I think this example is DEI, affirmative action, wokeness on steroids. It's not even just in regard to race. They want, dwarfs and people who are mentally challenged to be involved in airline regulation and traffic channeling. It's absolutely absurd. I think it represents the sort of ghost of Joe Biden and the legacy of 4 years of truly abysmal, horrific policy. But the craziest part is, in that press briefing room, the mainstream media was melting down over President Trump saying that. Politico's lead story was basically victim blaming President Trump, essentially saying that, his playbook for any emergencies are just to blame Democrats and blame, the culture wars, fan the flames of the culture war. How about those people take some responsibility for the fact that they've created a culture whereby DEI and wokeness is sort of the law of the land, and people who dare to speak out against it are vilified or canceled or mocked and ridiculed. So they certainly don't like President Trump daring to say that, but he was proved right yet again. I think it did turn out that the captain of the helicopter was actually a woman who I believe had around 500 hours of training. And frankly, I hope that it's wokeness and DEI and affirmative action, because if not, it's something a lot more nefarious. Or I think it points to the fact that America has a real systemic infrastructure problem, and we shouldn't be sending billions, to that fact, hundreds of billions of dollars to foreign countries to boost up their military industrial complex, their planes, their air traffic control, their, everything that we apparently don't have running up to speed here in the United States. So however you parse it, it's just a perfect example of either putting America last through policy, or putting America last so a bunch of, cultural elites can pat themselves on the back and feel like they have a diverse hire, in an aspect of society that I guess doesn't affect people who fly necessarily by private jet. But I think you see it right in the grooming gangs going on in Britain. You see it with immigration, all just so the ruling elite of both of our countries can feel like they've done something good. They're woke. They can pat themselves on their multicultural backs. The average people have to suffer, and in this case, people died.
Absolutely. Natalie Winters, you definitely got into the White House based on merit. There's no question about that, as did Caroline Leavitt. And we look forward to seeing you again soon on The World According to Rowan Dean. And congratulations, and keep on upsetting all those characters in the White House press room. I know you will. Thanks so much, Natalie.